Manga is great, right? We love to read it, but sometimes when I read, I want to read something complete. I'd be missing out on a ton of great series if I only did that for sure, but closure is good. And so because of that, I thought I'd recommend you guys 5 short manga you can read. Hopefully there's a couple in there that you haven't heard of. I did try to throw in a few less known ones. That's not me trying to be quirky or different, but I thought it might be nice to hear about some you haven't heard of before. I'm going to put all of the series I mentioned in the description in case you don't fancy watching, and also chapters if you want to skip around the video a bit. They shouldn't really be focused on one specific genre. I put in some action, psychological, slice of life. I'd say the one thing in the list is actually lacking is romance, if anything. And what am I designating as short in this video? Anything 50 chapters or less. Why 50 chapters, you ask? I don't know, I just randomly picked a number. But before we kick this list off, I just want to reiterate what is good about short manga. So as I said, you get closure because they typically have an ending. It can also give you a nice break from a longer series, and also allows you to dip your toe into a different genre to see what they're like if you wanted to try something different. So there's a lot of good things about short manga. So I'm going to kick this list off with a somewhat more well-known series, and it is called Happiness. Happiness is a manga about a school kid who gets turned into a vampire and follows all of the events that happen because of this. And I know what you might be thinking, it sounds just like Tokyo Ghoul, you know, a kid gets ambushed by a woman on the street, and now he's got the ability of a long life, but he also wants to bite people. The approach is very different in Happiness though. It's more of an introspective tale on the negatives of being a vampire. For example, getting alienated from your family, or dealing with loneliness, and struggling to even attend school because of how sick it makes you feel. And what's really cool about it is it's kind of like an ensemble cast. You get a lot of insight into how a lot of different characters are feeling or what they're going through. At least for the first half of the manga, I'd say it's very drama focused, and I enjoyed that a lot because it didn't feel too cringy or sort of heavily aimed at teens in what was going on. And then it paces itself well into how the situation around them gets bigger and bigger until it's not just affecting them anymore. It gets a lot darker as the story goes on, not that it wasn't at the beginning, mind you. And once again, it delves deeper into the characters, and I know I keep banging on about them, I'm sorry, but because alone they make this manga worth reading. But there is another big reason I'd recommend it as well, which is the artwork. The characters look great and consistent, but more specifically, the backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous to look at. I do like to ramble and dribble on about atmosphere in my videos, but seriously, if you're looking for something to really pull you in with its art, I can assure you Happiness will do that. Something that's really interesting about it too is the way that the vampires see the night sky. It's especially beautiful to them, but you might notice it looks very similar to Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night painting, if any of you are familiar. And if you know the backstory behind this, it makes a lot of sense. Van Gogh actually painted Starry Night while he was in an asylum suffering from a lot of mental health problems. And so with relevance to the manga, I thought it was a lovely nod to the characters who look up at this night sky as they suffer the downfall of their own minds. So overall, Happiness is a vampire manga with a pretty standard story, but well worth reading due to its amazing characters and art. Next up on this list is Stargazing Dog. I really wasn't joking when I said these were short manga recommendations, because this one clocks in at a whopping 2 whole chapters. But considering that, it's so poignant. Without spoiling too much, it's about a family who take in an abandoned puppy. The daughter is the one who takes him in, the mum is the one who feeds him, but he ends up growing very close to the father of the family because he's the one that walks him. And yes, this manga really is told from the perspective of the dog, which is quite a bold move, but it ends up working wonders for the storytelling. Anyway, the father ends up spending even more time with the dog due to certain events, and it pretty much just covers their journey together. I'm desperately trying to hold back saying any more story-wise, because I don't want to spoil it for you too much, but by the end this really hit me emotionally. Harder than some manga which are a lot longer than this too. And the reason for this is because there are so many messages you can take away from it. A couple I personally related with were that things never really go as planned, and to be more accepting of the fact that nothing lasts forever. In fact, this story is kind of only 1 chapter long, as the second is more of an epilogue, but it pays homage to the first story beautifully. And both are backed up by simple but powerful visuals which help sort of stick the message and make everything more emotional. Maybe it's because I haven't read that much, or maybe it's because I'm secretly a sucker for this kind of thing, but even if you're not, because of its length, then it's a really good place to start and try something different. There is also a sequel called Star Protector Dog, which brings the total up to a massive 6 chapters, crazy I know, but I thought I'd let you know there's a sequel in case you end up liking it. Moving on to my third pick, Teppu is a sports manga but with a nice twist on the main character. Natsuo is a girl who's excellent at any sport she picks up, to the point where she's actually bored because she can't find a challenge anywhere. She's a bit of a bully, a loner, probably because she's a bully, and there isn't anything really particularly likeable about her at the start. This is until she stumbles upon MMA, mixed martial arts, and finds someone who might just be stronger than her, which is a very different take on the typical I want to be the very best because it's my dream kind of sports thing. Really, it focuses on her insecurity and jealousy. And although she claims to want to find a real challenge, she hates the idea of someone being better at something than her, so she joins a gym and learns to become an MMA fighter. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that this is a story for everyone because of how the main character acts. Seriously, she's a total bitch. But what I think it does do is give you a realistic view on the other side of sports. Because if you've ever played sports or games even, you do get those arrogant people who look down on everyone else and don't even necessarily like the sport they play. Natsuo fits this role perfectly because her sole reason for wanting to even train is to bash a girl's face in because she looked happy. Come on man, that is jealousy on another level. And the problem that comes along with being naturally good at everything is that you can get through life without really ever having to try. So when you do come across something that you aren't as good at, putting in effort can be scary and kind of difficult. And I think it also shows that hard work is just as, if not more important than having natural talent. I'm personally blessed with having neither talent or the willpower to crawl out of bed each morning, but back on topic, it's showing that if you have the talent but don't work hard enough, then those around you can end up actually doing better. Damn, I really gotta work harder on this channel. The art is in a, let's say, unique style, which might not be everyone's cup of tea, but honestly it's pretty good. During the fights especially, I found it super easy to follow and the movements of the characters are drawn in a nice clean way. The fights are actually pretty hype. I'm not exactly a big follower of fighting sports in real life, but I found this really exciting to read. So all in all, it's the journey of a narcissist through sports, with a take interesting enough to keep me reading, and hopefully you too. My fourth recommendation is one a bit more widely known again, but for good reason. All You Need Is Kill is set on an Earth invaded by these alien-like creatures called mimics. It's that classic, do or die situation for the humans, and so they form this defense force where people use mechs to fight back. Now don't worry if you don't like mecha, because I don't either, and it takes the back burner here while the main focus is on a soldier called Keiji. Keiji goes off to fight for this defense force but sadly dies in his first battle. So he's shocked when he wakes up again the next day and finds himself to be living the same day over and over. And if it sounds familiar, it's probably because there's a film called Edge of Tomorrow which is based on it, but the manga in my opinion is a lot better than the film, and in particular the ending is way better, but obviously I won't spoil that for you. So Keiji, as you'd expect after experiencing loop after loop, he starts to become an experienced fighter, with the side effect of becoming a bit of an edgelord. And he's looking for a way to break out of this loop and find out what caused it in the first place, and that's pretty much the whole story. It's not complex, it's very simple actually, but it's really enjoyable and easy to read. Despite it being a looping day for the most part, due to the fact that Keiji is constantly changing and growing, it never really feels boring. I flew through this in one sitting because I was really curious to see what would happen in each chapter. And it also has some great female characters too, such as the Valkyrie, and in between all the death and war, I also found it somewhat wholesome too. I can't really explain why, but let me know if you feel that. The art is just wow. Each page makes you want to bust. Everything from the armor suits to the battlegrounds to the characters, everything is just beautiful to look at. Being the artist for Death Note is not surprising, but the style and the scenes suit the story to perfection. If you like a lot of action, beautiful art, and a bit of mystery on the side, then this one's for you. My final, and by coincidence my favourite that I want to recommend, is Solanin. It is another well-known one, but I couldn't pass it up because I love it. I actually cried reading this, not even at the sad parts for some reason, I don't know why, but maybe I was just emotional. Solanin tells the story of a group of college graduates trying to cope with growing up and having to become functioning members of society. Fun. Everyone hates their jobs and no one has any direction except for Tanada, who still jams with his old bandmates from college. And it's all about these people breaking free from their routine and pursuing things that really matter to them in life, such as music. But how can you manage to do this when you also have the responsibility of being an adult? That's kind of the question that Solanin focuses on. It's very realistic in terms of how the characters act and the events that unfold, which works wonderfully for these short manga, because it immerses you in that story and gets you attached to the characters. The art style was a perfect addition to this too. It's got that signature lifelike character design that Inio Asano loves, plus the scanned photographic photographic backgrounds too. This one hits very close to home for me in the ways that the characters act or the motions that they go through. It really helped me come to grips with some negative feelings I had about life, and also realize that you can be happy without needing some magnificent, amazing things. I really recommend it because it is a story that tugs at your heartstrings, well, hopefully at least, and I'm sure no matter how old you are, you'll probably find something relatable in this story or be able to connect with it. And if not, then, I don't know, you can have a free bottle of water or something. But before we end, as a bonus, I've got a few others which I didn't add to this list, but you could definitely check out. So there's Abara, which is a dystopian action manga. If you're a Chainsaw Man fan, you might want to give this one a look because Fujimoto got a lot of visual inspiration from it. I mean, there's literally a character called Denji in it, and he transforms into something very similar to one of Denji's forms. It has a very heavy focus on visual storytelling, so be prepared for that. 3 Days of Happiness, this asks the question, what would you do if you could sell off years of your life for money? It's one of my all-time favorites, and as an added bonus, I actually made a video on it, so I can shamelessly plug that here if you ever read it. And lastly, Pokemon Adventures. I'm kinda lying to you with this one because it's got hundreds of chapters, but the first adventure is only 40 chapters long and is self-contained. So if you're on a trip down memory lane, definitely check that one out. That's all I have today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video or at least found it useful. If you did, consider subscribing and hitting all the buttons and that stuff. It would help me out a ton. Follow me on my socials if you want, and of course remember to drink some water and take it easy. Peace.